And so, there he was, Hitler, his gift of oratory. This is what made him into the charismatic, dazzling, and hypnotizing leader of a nation and the conqueror of Europe. His second talent was he had a stubborn faith in an ideology that he had created in his own mind and absolutely believed it was right, and from which he couldn't, and he certainly wouldn't, ever move away from. But it was his blind ideology, single-minded racist hatred, his stubborn self-belief and obsequious disciples that guided him step by step down the road to disaster. His military mistakes and finally his own demise. They were all a result of his ideology. But very quickly, I don't want to waste too much time here, but before that, I'm sure most of you know a bit of history. Basically, very quickly, his background: he was born in 1889 in Linz, in Austria, not German, of course. He was the fourth of 6 offspring. Alois Schicklbrucker, by the way, that's his proper name, not Hitler. Can you imagine him saying Heil Schicklbrucker? I don't know, it doesn't sound right, does it? He was a customs officer, his father. He wasn't poor, and when he died, Adolf was only 7 years old. Adolf loved his mother, Clara, more than MD, but she died when he was 18. He had an older brother, a younger sister. She had mental issues, and that was probably because of the incest that had happened earlier in the family. He showed poor ability at school. He left with no qualifications. And he went to Vienna as an artist. Yeah, isn't that what they all do when they can't add up one and one? That's what he did. When he was a dreamer. He really was. People that knew him said he was a loner, he was a drifter, he was a lazy character, and he was happy to live the life of a layabout. He lived in doss houses in Vienna, and he had a small inheritance of his father's will. His father had been a civil servant, so there was a small inheritance. It was just enough for him to live this life. He was twice refused entry to the Munich Art School, which he thought he was a wonderful artist. It wasn't that bad. He just wasn't good enough for art school. But in 1914, we all know that date, don't we? Well, in 1914, war enforced conscription. And he was keen to join the German army, not the Austrian. And he was allowed to join. He persuaded them to let him join, and he joined the 16th Bavarian Reserve Regiment. Now, this, for the first time, it really gave him a little bit of direction in life, and eventually it gave him his vision for the future of Germany. So a little bit of background there, just so you remember just what he was like. The book looks at these lucky events. If we had a whole week to spare, I'd be going through every one of them for you. We don't have that much time, obviously, so I'm going to look at one or two, and I'm certainly looking at them fairly quickly. But the book lists 11 major moments of good luck, and then explains why they were good luck. And it begins in the First World War. His luck showed through in the First World War. Think of it. At the great battles, Ypres, Loos, Fromelles, Arras, Passchendaele, Somme. We've heard of all these great names. The death rate was sometimes 50%, sometimes more. Hitler fought in every one of those battles. Every one. He was there. He wasn't one of the 50% though. At the first Battle of Ypres in 1914, 40,000 men were killed in the first few days. And his regiment started the battle with 3,600 men in his regiment, only 611 at the end. One of them was Hitler. In war, he was no coward. He seemed fearless, and he was instinctively a risk taker. He had the job of being a messenger. Now, a messenger is a dangerous job, in the First War especially. Communications were poor. a messenger, and he had to cycle. He had a bicycle, by the way. He had to cycle from one place to the next with the general's orders. In November 1914, the very first year of the war, a French bomb exploded in the regimental forward command post just minutes after he left, leaving the entire staff dead, including the commanding officer who had just recommended the Iron Cross to him, second class, to him, a few days earlier. But he just stepped out. The place blew up. There were many incidents like that, but the luckiest, I think, probably, and Hitler thought this too, was in September 1918, when a British soldier whose name was Henry Tandy, and this has been verified, Henry Tandy really did exist, and he really did verify this story. He had his rifle sights, he was looking towards the other trenches, and he saw this Gefreiter, which was just a corporal, which was Hitler, in his sights. But he hesitated, because he didn't want to shoot a wounded soldier. At this point, Hitler had a small wound. And he looked through his sights and he saw Hitler on target, ready to pull the trigger, didn't do it. Hitler looked towards him and he nodded thanks for not shooting him. Hitler later had a painting made of that moment, made by an Italian artist, and he had it hung in his Berghof villa in Salzburg. You can't get any closer to death than that. Or can you? Yes, you can, many times. So despite being wounded in the thigh, temporarily blinded from mustard gas, he had over 4 years in the battlefield survived massive artillery bombardments, countless machine gun attacks, many poison gas explosions. Lucky Hitler was awarded the Iron Cross First Class, and he came through all alive and in one piece. Yes, you can say, so did a lot of other people. But percentage-wise, he had been in every battle. Now his good luck continued very quickly after the war. This man, Dietrich Eckart, a wealthy founder of the German Workers' Party, which later became the Nazi Party, actually had Hitler speaking in a beer hall. Hitler had gone into, he was actually spying on these groups. After the war, there was a lot of disruption in Germany. There were a lot of political groups. Hitler went to spy on one and ended up standing up and speaking. And as soon as he stood up and spoke, everybody said, "Who's this then?" Just like that, quite astonishing. And Dietrich Eckart, who was a wealthy guy, heard him. And he immediately thought, this is it. This is the guy we've been looking for all my life, the Messiah to save Germany. He sponsored this penniless ex-soldier, and soon large numbers of people were being introduced to and taken in by Hitler's remarkable public speaking talent. By 1921, his passionate, engrossing entree skills ensured his election by an overwhelming majority as the undisputed leader of the newly renamed Nazi Party. Party members and the public support grew rapidly, particularly in southern Germany in the state of Bavaria. And by 1923, Hitler was expressing frustrations of the new German Republic government's weaknesses and the draconian terms of the Treaty of Versailles. I'll come back to the Treaty of Versailles in a minute. His popularity meant he had a lot of followers. It increased his confidence, his ideas. He began to think he could do more. He heard about Mussolini taking over the Italian government in Rome, and he thought, that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. Let's just get in there as a large group and we'll take over the German government. Sounds naive, well, obviously, but Hitler and hundreds of his supporters crashed into a large public meeting in the Burger Braukeller in Munich. His followers surrounded the hall while he and a gang of his henchmen burst in. Hitler fired a shot, he had his pistol, fired a shot into the ceiling, and he proclaimed, he said, "This is the beginning of a national revolution." And one witness wrote, and I think this is interesting because it just shows how great a speaker Hitler really was. This chap says, when he spoke, it was a rhetorical masterpiece. In fact, he says, in a few sentences, he totally transformed the mood of the audience. I have rarely experienced anything like it. And when you think of the circumstances for someone to write that, it must have been, for some reason, it must have been amazing to hear the way he spoke. So, carrying his pistol, he took the front line of several thousand, 2,000 or so of his followers, and decided to march on the headquarters of the government in Munich. He thought he would start with Munich, take over Munich, and then he would move to Berlin. As they approached the Feldern Hall, which is the main, like we would call City Hall, they were confronted by a large police cordon. See him here? Hitler linked arms with Göring, we'll come across him in a minute, yes, on one side, and Richter on the other side. Göring was shot. Richter was killed. Hitler, in the middle, the leader, at the front, nothing. Luck of the devil, Hitler escaped. He escaped that, but he was arrested. And he had to stand in court and declare, or try to defend himself. He defended himself, and that actually was a great idea from his point of view, because it gave him a platform. It was a great story, this, lovely story. And the press reported everything he said. And the whole court was engrossed. All of a sudden, he captured the whole court, including the judge. But certainly the newspapers reported every word of his speech. And consequent of that, actually, Goebbels, who you'll have heard of, and we'll speak about later, was one of the many people who read the report in Berlin, when he was in Berlin. And just reading the report made Goebbels a follower of Hitler. He left Berlin and went and found Hitler. So even his words, never mind his voice. So anyway, he was given a 5-year sentence. That sounds pretty heavy, but actually he could have been strung up because it was treason. So that was a pretty light sentence. And then actually, if you'll see, he actually only had to serve a few months. But he was treated very well. He was actually treated like a celebrity now. Everybody knew him. Everybody had read the papers. Everybody had heard of this guy. He was extremely lucky that his greatest admirer, a man who really worshipped him, and who was already his party deputy, his name was Rudolf Hess. We all know Hess. He was imprisoned along with Hitler, and this was actually a break as far as Hitler was concerned, because Hitler, he was never, he couldn't, wasn't well educated, wasn't a good writer, but Hess had graduated, and the two of them just exchanged Hitler's points of view, his ideas, his thoughts, and Hess wrote them all down. He wrote them all down, and he turned it into Mein Kampf. That's where Mein Kampf came from. It wasn't written by Hitler. It was written, really, by Hess. But he wrote down all the words that Hitler said. And in Mein Kampf, he essentially, again, we'll look a bit more at that later on, he made it quite clear who the enemies of Germany were. The Bolsheviks, that is to say the communists from Russia mainly, and the Jews. This is an amazing picture. I think it's fantastic that there is a picture of it. This is Hitler leaving the prison. He's leaving the prison. Look at them. The prison guards are saluting him. He was a big celebrity. Fabulous. I think it's an amazing picture, that. It's wonderful that sometimes I've looked at lots of pictures, obviously, researching, and there are some pictures you think, oh my goodness, somebody was there at that moment.